Hey,
Hey,
Werner.
Matthew.
Oh, hey, how's it going, Werner?
Another interesting day. You know, economics, tariffs, AI.
Chaos.
Uh, uh, Man, it just keeps on coming. I mean, I was looking at the Dow Jones, and while I was looking at it, it dropped another 100 points. Exactly. And I haven't looked at it for half an hour, and might be up 200 points, or it might be down another 300 points. Nobody knows. So it's it's one of those days. Nobody really knows where what is going. So it's interesting to watch.
Yeah, I just think it's honestly like the government's epi. I don't know if they got like one of those magic 8 balls and they're like, is there going to be a recession? And it's like, maybe. Okay, is there going to give me an answer I can work with? Is there going to be a recession?
You shouldn't say that too loud, because I think that's an excellent description of, and I can actually see it happen. Sorry, I can actually see it in the White House, and I can actually see people saying, "Yeah, this kind of works for us," because at this stage it's just schizophrenic. The only thing that seems to be certain is that everything seems to point towards a recession, and a consumer recession. And like you and I discussed, um, you know, uh, yes, in America, the level of contagion across other markets, nobody knows. But I think CEOs are saying recession coming. Investment banks, depending on who you are, some is trying to talk it up. But in the back office, they're all hedging their bets, and they're following a very defensive strategy, investment strategy, which tells you they're expecting some recession coming in. So it's going to be interesting days ahead. But I mean, let let's talk about AI.
Oh, I
And
love
let's not
AI.
get let's not get stuck up into the hype and everything else that's going on around AI. Who's investing the next $40 billion? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? If I hear about the Tesla taxi again in my life, it's one time too many. Um, you know, and I can go on and on and on and on. So, any case, let's simplify a few things for a few folks. So, you and I talked about it the other day. So, for most people, AI is this big thing.
Okay.
Uh, but both you and I know that it consists of infrastructure, models, applications. Just take people through this to make sure that the non-developer, the non-code guy, can also understand what AI is and where they actually interface with AI.
Wow. So artificial intelligence is the largest emergent field of domain science in computer science. So if you look at like say chemistry and you're like what kind of emergent sciences or like domain fields are there inside of chemistry, you're going to have like
Mhm.
polymer chemistry, organic, you're going to have
Yeah,
like all these different types of chemistry, and
correct.
some are bigger than others. If you look at computer science, there's basically AI is this giant blob, and then there's a bunch of other things in there
Hmm.
that are not AI but also in some ways connected to AI. So,
Yep, exactly.
computer science is a lot of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence breaks down into an unbelievable amount of subdomains. They're all
Hmm.
doing relatively the same thing, but at the same time, they're doing it in different ways. The point behind AI is, can I create a computer that employs some kind of process where it thinks or behaves like a human? And we've seen this way back in the days where we had fuzzy logic Roombas. You remember those little circular things
Of
that would
course,
go around and
of
bump into the
course. Yep,
walls? So that's like what's
yep.
called fuzzy logic. So
Hmm.
that's a kind of logic. That's like very old. As weird as it sounds, that's actually like really old technology where you would teach a computer to sit there and say, do this behavior until X happens, then change behavior.
Correct,
So it would walk around. They would just kind of like screw
correct,
around, bang into the side of a wall, and then kind of go around like this. And
correct.
so we've built up from there to the main piece of technology. And I imagine some people that are listening right now, and maybe even yourself, I've probably not heard of this, but you've probably seen a graph that represents this, which is called a multi-layer perceptron. So a multi-layer perceptron is getting into the machine learning thing, which is you have this giant graph, a whole bunch of circles, and a whole bunch of lines pointing between them. And that model that we've created as computer scientists was created to mechanically represent a human brain. So inside of your
Okay.
brains, you got these cool little things called neurons, and a neuron, when it gets an electrical stimuli, it activates. Once when it activates, it chains
Correct.
into another neuron, and it forms a neuron pathway. And when the characteristic of that pathway forming is it does a specific action on your body. It could be me
But
like
how does it happen in a machine? Is that where algorithms comes in, or how does it happen?
yeah. So a multi-layer perceptron is basically us just recreating that process inside of a machine where we have neurons inside of a machine, and a neuron is just a single piece of code. And we say this
Hmm.
code does a certain thing when it activates. That's it.
Exactly.
And we have all these inputs going into it, and once when these inputs go above a certain level, then this thing activates. This could be like a temperature sensor, this could be pressure sensor, it could be like all these different things. Once when each of these go below a certain level, this activates, and then that can activate other neurons in a chain. When those neurons chain together, a certain path happens, and then we say this characteristic forms.
Okay. Got that.
So a classic way that we do this, and this is like a tricky way. There's some computer scientists listening to this that know the joke of what I'm getting into. It's called the B's and threes problem. So B's and threes, where we love to do this to our junior computer scientists, where we say, "Hey, here's a bunch of pictures. Could you tell me which ones are B's or threes?" And then we hold up like a picture, and we don't hold it up, but we give an AI this picture, and it's like got a bunch of B's on it, and they go, "Oh, those are B's." Yep. And we give them a bunch of numbers, and inside those numbers you can see the number 3. And then people go, "Oh, that's 3, I guess." Yep, there's a 3 in there. So we go through, and then we start like doing all kinds of really obscure things where we go like, "This is 3 B's," and it goes, "Well, that's B's." No, it's a number 3. So like we just keep doing like more and more weird, wacky stuff until we eventually get really obscure. We give you a picture of a dog. We're like, "What is this?" And it's like, "Well, it's a dog." "Yeah, but you have to tell me if it's a B or a 3."
Okay.
And they go, "It's a B, I guess." No, it's a dog." So you get it wrong.
Okay.
And they go, "Well,
Okay.
I don't understand." And it's like, because that's how these things are formed. So you have a neural network and you only have a limited number of outputs. And you as a
Yes,
human being set those number of outputs. We classify them with the context that we have.
I got that.
So I give you something that's not contextually related, but I'm saying it has to fall into these two buckets because these are the two
Yes,
outputs. And then you go, "Well, that's a dog." And I go, "No, it has to be a B or 3." And then you go, "Well, I guess it's a
got it.
B." And no, it's actually a dog.
Yep, yeah. No,
So
okay.
that
I
that
get it completely. But how does that relate back to AI? Because there's infrastructure, there's models, there's application layers. Explain that. And also, what I want you to do is I want you to take people through how you would have developed an app a year ago and how you develop an app now.
sure.
Very basic steps, and start with the layers that's in AI so that people understand when they hear AI, when they see investments going into AI, when they see developments going on in AI, what are they seeing? Are they seeing the model level? Are they seeing the application level? What is NVIDIA? Where do they fit in? Where does OpenAI, ChatGPT fit in?
Yeah. So going back to the like what are we doing in AI right now? I'm not I'm not going out and like building AI anymore because I think we're done kind of creating structures or like
Hmm.
creating new kinds of algorithms, as weird as that sounds, where we have kind of out of the box solutions now like ChatGPT that works so nice that I don't have to go out there and build anything. Like I had an app where I wanted to just have something that could go and read restaurant menus and tell me like where I can get like the cheapest burger and fries. So it would go and look at like random restaurants and it would just read the menus, and I coded it all up myself using a multi-layer perceptron neural network. And I wanted to run this through saying like, here's everybody's menus and just telling you what's on people's menus. And then it was able to do that, and it was kind of wonky, wasn't great. And then I went, Well, if I throw it in ChatGPT, is ChatGPT just going to be able to give me an answer? Yes. It gave me an answer immediately. I didn't have to code anything. I just literally just hand it the menus and it just tells me the answers. So this is showing us like what these AIs do is they create statistical models of give me input and I give you output. So you give a picture to it, you say, what does this picture represent? And then the model compresses it, they run it through, and then at the end of it, they say, this is what I think it is, given the outputs that you told me I'm allowed to say. So
Got that.
like what I was trying to do there is saying, but the input layer is going to be a picture, a menu, and the output is going to be, give me price, give me like what products you see, give me like a context of like what the store is and what it sells. So it was able to do that, but again, like ChatGPT just seems to be an out of the box solution that works better than anything I can sit there and code over a weekend. So why not just use that instead? And then to your other question of, well, what can we do with it right now, like ChatGPT? I'm at the point where I don't really code a lot anymore. I mostly just have workflows that I hand to ChatGPT where I say, build an app that looks like this.
So just to make sure that people understand that. So what ChatGPT does is ChatGPT already has learned itself and have libraries of ready-made code.
Yes.
I'm making this sound very, very simple. That if you give it a specific instruction, it can convert that into code or an ask or an app or whatever, and it can build it a lot faster because you don't have to write the code anymore.
That's correct.
You and I spoke about that. How ethical is that?
Ooh, so
Because it's everybody's code. It's everybody's developer's code that's on there, isn't it?
yeah, so the way it works is if you're a coder and you want to save your code so it doesn't disappear on you because you decide to go into the bathtub with your laptop or whatever reason, you typically like to save your code in what's called a code repository. So a code repository is like, say, for example, GitHub. GitHub is owned by...
It's like a vault.
Kind of, yeah. So I would have to, you can either make your repository public or you can make it private. If it's public, then anybody can go and look at my code. If it's private, then only people that I give my private key to can go and take a look at it, or people that I invite. So the largest code repository in the world is GitHub, and it's owned by Microsoft, which just happens to own OpenAI.
Yeah, I think they do. Huh?
Yeah. So take a moment and consider the following, that you have the largest code repository in the world, and you also have a machine that you can just feed input into, and it can create statistical models to do work. Well, I mean, I don't mean to sound the alarm on anybody, but I think that there might be a situation that happens that perhaps a large language model company feeds an entire code repository database into it and sees what the output happens. Why not? So is there any proof that happened? No. Could it happen? Theoretically, yeah.
How would you know if it does? I mean, that's a very naive question coming from me, but how would you know if it happens?
There's no measuring stick. There's no tests that you can do. But at the same time, I can go on and I can use ChatGPT and I can sit there and say, hey, code me a Django app that allows the users to do X or Y. Like I could literally sit there and be like, make a version of YouTube, and it would code up an entire version of YouTube and hand it to me.
And you just copy paste the code into whatever. And is that exciting or scary for a developer?
It's both.
That's my first question. Sorry?
It's both. It's super cool because you can sit there and be like, hey, I want to make my own version of, I don't know, like Amazon. I want to make my own version of like whatever. And it can just go and code entire things for you and just hand it to you. And that's because like on the coding side of things, we're getting better and better. Like for decades, we were getting better at building systems that would automate a whole bunch of tasks with regards to building, deploying code for you. And it got to the point where, because this is so well documented and it's so well done and it's up on repositories everywhere, that eventually a large language model could look at it and go like, okay, well, the packages work that way and I just have to understand how to automate and use these packages. Then I could just go beep boop and then I could just build whatever people want based off the IDMs of programming.
So does this mean anybody can build an app?
Pretty much, yeah. Like if you have a fun weekend warrior project, you could always do is fire up ChatGPT and just sit there and say, hey, I want an app in Python or Django that does a certain thing, and it goes and builds it up for you and then it hands it to you.
Well, remember when you laughed at me 3 weeks ago when I said I just did that, but now I don't know what to do with the code?
Yeah.
So again, that was just me playing over the weekend to see what happens. But let's get a little bit more serious about this. Um, and again, I want you to explain this to folks that's necessary developers. Um, and when, because right now, as a business owner or a consumer or just somebody that anybody that spends time on their phone and engages with apps and new apps and cool stuff and things like that, it's getting more and more difficult also for them to distinguish between good ones, bad ones, ones that they want to keep on using, something that just looks weird and fun, and let's just see where this takes us. But explain to folks what is a wrapper and what is a moat. And
I'll
I
give.
want, and I'll tell you why I'm asking you that question, because I want people to start looking at apps in an informed way. And I want business owners, when they get presented with certain solutions, that they start asking the right questions and just don't go with the first AI solution that's being offered to them. So there's a bit of background to this.
Yeah. So I'll give my definition of what those two things are. A wrapper is a term that developers have used for a long time, which
Mm-hmm.
is just we take something else and then we wrap a block of code around it that does a specific task. So let's say if you
Okay.
have an algorithm, what's a good example? Oh, like I used to work with like high tech algorithms that did specific tasks. So you would say like, hey, normally when you go to use this algorithm, it's a command line, so you have to like open up like a DOS prompt or something like that, and you have to type in
Mm-hmm.
like this big long chunk in code into there with all these parameters and all these different keywords and stuff, and then it would run. We're going to build a wrapper to that, which is just it's going to be hosted on a website. So instead of going
Mm-hmm.
and like typing it into your terminal, it's hosted on a website. Instead of giving all these weird parameters and symbols and commands, you just click a bunch of buttons. So
Yep.
a wrapper is just we're taking that and just reconfiguring it, wrapping the code with another application layer that serves a new purpose. That's all.
Okay.
And then, oh, go ahead. Did you?
No, no, you go ahead.
And then a moat is a term us developers use when we want to be able to build something and we want to be able to hide what that thing does. It's a way to defend your code base against other people. An example of this was I've deployed, there's a system out there called Docker, and it's super awesome. I totally love Docker. It allows you to take your code and you can compartmentalize it inside of a transferable miniature operating system, and then you can hand it to other people, and they can run your code inside of their system, so long as their system runs Docker. So I could like have a Linux box, and I could be coding something, wrap it in a Docker container, hand it to you, and then you could run your my code on your Windows system, so long as you have Docker. So it allows us to
Got it.
transfer things between systems very easily. And then you can also have a batch file inside of that auto execute. So I could say like, here's my code, just run it like this. And then
Mm-hmm.
it just
Mm-hmm.
runs my code. You don't need to know what my code does.
Yeah.
So that's the moat, is like I defend it by putting it inside this container. I can encrypt it if I want to, and then I can hand it to you, and then you can execute on it.
So is a moat the same as proprietary software or proprietary database?
It can be like proprietary just means like you're hiding it in some way. So it's not
Correct.
like out in the open. This is you can take steps to like literally defend it from people. So like say like encrypting your code or compiling it and then putting it inside of a Docker container makes it a little annoying to get it hold of.
Okay, so something you and I also talked about briefly the other day. A quarter of the Y Combinator startups, their database sits in a ChatGPT
Yep.
wrapper. Is that the right way of putting it?
Yep, that could be the right way of putting it because you can like I have an app right now that I built and for Black Anvil, and all it is just a database that was constructed using ChatGPT, and it's just a file that sits on my computer, and I access it using ChatGPT. So it has like all the database access layers.
So let's say I'm an investor and, every day I used to get maybe 10 or 15 pitch decks or whatever a day. Now, with the rapid pace of development of AI, it suddenly increased to 100 or a few hundred a day in terms of folks that's looking for money, venture capital to take their app to the next level.
Mm.
How do these folks make a distinction between, how would you make a distinction? How would you go about investing or deciding to invest in a startup nowadays? What would be important for you? And I'm going somewhere with this, but, and I'm going to use an example that a few examples you and I are working with. Just as, let's say you were an investor, you understand coding, you understand AI. If somebody stands in front of you and pitches an idea, what would you absolutely wallop them with? What would you challenge the hell out of them with to see if they really know what the hell they're talking about, or are they just trying to sell you a fast kick?
So, I'm not an investor, so I don't know how to invest in companies. I've taken
No, but you
investment from
know what?
people, but
But you do know what to ask.
yeah, I do know. At least I have some like general ideas of what I would ask. I typically don't ask a lot about the app. When I'm doing like these founder to founder discussions, I talk to them a lot about themselves. And the
Hmm.
key thing I'm trying to find is it doesn't matter like who you are. Do you have the right team? Because you can have like a bad app, or you could have like a kind of crappy launch. You can have money problems. There's like lots of issues you can have. But if your
Yep.
team sucks, it doesn't matter like how much money I throw at you, right? Like it doesn't matter
But
like
do you still need a team with
yeah.
AI?
Yeah, you still need a team. You don't need to have like 50 people. You can do now like an app
Okay.
easily like with like 2 to 3 people in my
Okay.
mind, and be able to successfully execute on it. But the key thing I'm trying to find out is like, do you have somebody that's going to be accountable and responsible for building the technology or like whatever technology you're building?
Got it.
Do you have somebody that's capable of running the technology, like somebody that you can take these tasks? And the way to describe this to founders is like you have to juggle a bunch of balls at the same time.
That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, and you can't let any of them drop, because
No, you can't.
if you let some of these core things drop, the rest of them will drop at it's just inevitable. So
Hmm.
there's going to be somebody that builds it, somebody that runs it. You have to have somebody that markets it and like tells the story of what you're creating and tells the story about the problem
Hmm.
and who you're trying to solve this for. Somebody that can sell it.
Hmm.
You have to have somebody that can like plan and like be able to execute on a vision.
Okay.
And you have to have somebody that can be able to understand, as mean as this sounds, you have to have somebody that can sit there in finance and pull the plug and say, we have to pivot because this isn't working. Like financially, this isn't just
Yes,
going
you
to work
do.
out.
Yes, you
And
do.
it's better to kill things early than to spend like a year on them and just have them slowly drag on.
I agree with all of that. However, let me hone in on a few things and a few thoughts as well. Now, when you do a pitch deck, and I'm going somewhere with this, when you do a pitch deck, what's the first kind of slide that you normally expect to see?
Well, I don't do pitch decks anymore. So
When you used to do them, and when you see pitch decks nowadays, what would be the first kind of slide that you would lead with, or that you would expect to see?
back in the old days,
Back in the old days, that's about a year or two ago, man.
yeah. So, well, it was even like 5 years ago, like when I was in Toronto, a lot of the investors would just want to be like, could you just do it on your phone and like just show me? It wasn't like show me a pitch deck.
Just
It's
show
like,
me it works.
yeah, just show me the app on the phone, show me how it works, and explain like
Yep.
the customer journey, and then explain
Yes.
like how you make money off that.
So they went straight into UX, customer
Yeah,
experience, and your commercialization model, revenue model, pricing.
yeah,
Couldn't care less. How are you going to make money?
yeah.
And are people using it?
So the big thing is like we can talk like we used to talk a lot about problem and spend all the time talking about the problem, and that's good.
Oh,
But at the same time, it's what's equally important as the problem is how you're creating a solution to solve it and how are you the best solution. Because as an investor, if this is a problem space you want to invest in, let's say you're an investor in food and you probably have like a top 5 problems that your food industry is suffering from, you want to disperse cash into different solutions in your portfolio. You don't want to invest in the 2 or 3 companies all doing the same problem space and doing the same thing, right? So
Exactly.
you need to understand like these are the problems. So I have an entrepreneur in front of me that identifies and says, yes, I get that that's one of the problems. This is how I'm solving the problem. So does that make sense? Do they acknowledge that there's the same problem that I see and they're trying to solve it in a meaningful, intelligent way?
So what I'm beginning to see and what I'm beginning to hear, and this is kind of why I've asked you all of these questions, and some of them might have been a little bit leading, um, but what I'm beginning to hear and see, and what research is beginning to show, is that nowadays when you talk to potential investors, angels, venture capital, doesn't matter, um, anybody at that kind of startup phase, is they have virtually no question around how your app actually works, how it's designed, the backend. Very, very little interest in it. They all assume there's a certain level or a very high level of AI involved in it. They are looking for ways of how that app makes use of a proprietary database or have proprietary software added on top of that. But And I was surprised by it. And I actually want to get your honest opinion about this because for me, it was like, I'm so glad this is happening. But, is that they, first thing first, is there's now a hell of a lot more questions about go to market.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's it, right?
The real boring shit. How are you going to sell this? To who are you going to sell it? And Matthew, do you mind if I mention the B word?
Go for it.
They actually ask the B word. They actually ask you about your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, it only took about 30 years for that to happen.
Yeah.
So do you see that happen as well? Or do you think I'm kind of looking at the wrong people writing stuff? Or
I was,
because I'm over the moon to see these two things happen. Because for me, branding has always been one of the ways of distinguishing anything from anything else. And both you and I have spent hours talking to people and talking to each other about the lack of an understanding of go-to-market strategy, selling, and just that whole kind of thinking around it.
yeah, the go to market strategy for SaaS people. Again, there's deep tech and
I know,
there's SaaS. The two of us were like
yes.
before we were like this,
I'm
and now
kind
we're
of
like
combining,
this. Yeah, like
I know,
very
but I'm
different.
still combining them kind of together in this.
Yeah. So SaaS people, our entire game plan now is go to market. That's the only thing that matters because like when you look at how much is this going to cost to build, how much is this going to cost to build a price plan for, what's the market size, what's the TAM, all of these questions don't actually matter. It's how fast can you build something and what market can you sell it into, what's the value proposition, what's the price
And are
point,
people willing to pay
are
for it?
people willing to pay for it? Because there's
Correct.
so many SaaS startups now, and we've been doing this for over a decade, that it's gotten to the point where the only thing that matters is evidence, like finance evidence. So we
Correct.
can plan and try to come up with all these really cute ideas. But in the reality, a lot of the SaaS people, like myself, realize there's only a handful of SaaS models that actually work with regards to how we build them and
Yes,
how we use them. And
yes,
the
they are.
only thing that determines success from fail is like a meaningful go to market strategy and that you're executing on, not one like you just draw it on a piece of paper or draw it on a
Or a
whiteboard.
slide.
Yeah, is like, what are you actually doing kind of thing.
Okay. Um, are you beginning to see startups migrate to that approach, or do they still have the older mindset versus new tools?
I see like we
Or is there
used
kind of still things moving around a little bit? It's kind of still a little bit fluid.
So there was more lag before is the best way to say it. Like when I started Food Bite, the concept was we're going to market this. Our go-to-market strategy was we're going to target meat processors because,
Mm,
and the reason why we targeted meat processors initially was they have the most money, they have the most complicated problem, they have the most pain, they're regulated more than
oh,
anybody.
agree
So
with all of that.
we when we started talking to meat processors and they were genuinely not interested because they're like we've been doing this for a long time more than anybody else and we know what we're doing and we trust what we do more than what
Hmm.
anything you could do would be. So then we pivoted around, tried a bunch of different, like our go-to-market strategy was like, okay, if we're not doing meat, let's do fish. Fish isn't working. Let's try dairy. Okay, dairy isn't working. So we just started pivoting to different industries until we found one industry that really needed what we had. And then we just kind of like scratched our head and went, why? Why? And then we found out why they needed it, which was just information we didn't have access to. And we changed our entire marketing strategy around that, marketed to them, and we're very successful doing so. But that's just because our team was small enough and was capable enough of trying out different things. Mind you, our initial idea was around HACCP, hazard analysis critical control point, as being
Sure.
like the mainstay of like that's the value proposition, is selling something that can produce these. And what it ended up being is something that can generate monitoring programs based off your GMP requirements, your general manufacturing practices requirements. So because we could generate something like that, the industry that we targeted was very interested in it and started buying in. But like we had to think of it from a mechanical way of how I organize this, which is try out idea,
Yes.
it fails. Okay, new value proposition, try that out, fails. New value proposition, try it out,
Right.
fails. And then we find one group of people that are like, we're interested, but only if you do this. So then it's okay, let's build that out as fast as possible. So it took us, of course, rather than a day, it took us months to build out this thing. Try it out.
Correct.
It's like
But
pretty good, but could you have it like this instead? Yeah, sure. So then we
yeah,
take, yeah.
yeah.
So it takes
That
time
happened.
until it
Yeah,
finally gets
that
built
happened.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now
So
it's
it
like
is.
you can just like
Yeah.
this.
Well, that's the point because just to kind of support what you're saying as well. I was talking to a founder in Utah, and it was again an AI application that I thought was super cool. And the interesting thing is when you kind of click on the button to have a demo, it's
Mm.
actually one of the three co-founders that would jump on a call, which I thought was super smart. But again, it just reinforces what you've just said is that the hard work of getting customers, talking to customers, getting the value proposition right, finding the solution, nothing can change that. AI just makes it so much faster to develop the potential solution or to adjust it. Correct?
Yep.
Um, let's move to a little bit more of a technical question. And this is one I have no idea. Well, I have a sense of what it is, but I
Ooh.
don't really know what it is. What is a CPI? Cost per interference
So
when it comes to AI. I think I know what it is, but apparently that's so. Like investors look at MRR, monthly recurring revenues, annual recurring revenues, lifetime values, cost of acquisitions, yada 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 yada. One of the things they're beginning to look at is CPI.
yeah. So going back to like my Scrum days and like when I used to sit around and a bunch of other developers along with myself would sweat in a room and eat pizza and argue with each other about what one single piece of data means.
Yep.
CPI is that. CPI is if you're going to go and develop something and you are already have a product that does X, but you needed to do Z and Y, and X interferes with you doing that. How do we take X out of the product or scale down X as much as possible and have Z and Y instead? So there's a cost, a technical debt that's absorbed by startups every time they need to pivot. And I tell this to
Got
startup
it.
founders, like you only have a limited number of pivots until people run out of energy and you run out of money, and then
Yeah, I
you're,
was just
you're
about to
toast.
say money. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what a CPI means from my point of view. It is like
But
you could.
then within the AI space, I'm 100% sure it means the same thing. Just the way they look at it will be different. Correct. And the cost associated, they would look at it
It's
different.
totally different.
Correct.
Like for
Yeah.
now, think of this from like my point of view is if I like with my app running, I can go and look live data of like what's happening. And then from that live data, I can interpret that as to like, okay, what do I think the customers are struggling with? If they're struggling, what can I do to better help them? And thusly,
Like
what
that.
can I do to drive value of my app? And does that even mean like I
Yes.
can ask for more money, or is this like the end? Like, is this because everybody's trying to do like the smallest cut solution now? Because
Mm.
we realize that the best way to sell a SaaS platform is not like $1,000 a month like we used to do back in the day. It's like how can we sell like a tiny little solution that
Mhm.
solves one problem, but we're better than
Mhm.
anybody else in the world at it, and then sell it for
Yes.
like
Yes.
$50 a month or something like that.
Yes.
And
Correct.
that's how you truly scale nowadays, is trying
It
to
is.
not hold a lot of data, try to make things like infinitely scalable, and focus really hard on the value proposition, targeting like one specific person.
Interesting.
And I say one person, not like one industry or one company. It's one person. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna target like chief finance officers. I got a finance app that's going to be
Mhm.
able to help them make decisions so that they can better produce budgets for their company that they can execute on. Cool. Then I'm going to target a CFO. I'm going to understand what their 9 to 5 looks like. I'm going to slip in there and say, I'm going to take this 30 minutes off your day by doing this. And it's going to give you better deliverables and better outcomes. And it's $50 a month. And they go, cool, done.
That works.
Yeah.
I'm still going to put you on the spot. Sorry. It's
Ooh.
my turn to ask many, 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 many
Go for it.
questions.
Do it.
So
Bubbles
again,
up.
you and I are having some meetings this week, talking to some folks, manufacturing companies, um, and a tech company, and the conversations is about how we can help them solve specific problems uh, with an AI-driven solution. Uh, uh, if you're a business owner, not a coder or a developer, so I asked you, what would you ask as an investor? I asked you, what would you look for? Now, as a business owner, what would you advise business owners to ask anybody that comes to them with a promise of some kind of AI-driven solution? And I know this is a difficult question,
That's
but
a funny question, actually.
again, well, Matthew, it's because I'm getting the question more and more
Hmm.
from business owners. I'm also having slight moments of anxiety when they tell me what they are being told and how much they are going to be charged. And I'm thinking, like, I do not know how to break this to them, but they're being ripped off. Um, and I'm struggling with terms of they've taken the leap or they are planning to take the leap. So part of my role is to reinforce that and to encourage that and to challenge that. But then when they go and find some of these solutions and they come back or they tell me somebody approached them, my next challenge is to kind of help them think about this the right way. So as an example, if somebody is looking at a part-time bookkeeper, they kind of know what kind of rate it is. If somebody
Yeah.
looks at a social media person, that can do content post development and posting, they kind of know what the rate is and what to expect and how it works. If somebody signs up to Instagram, you know, again, they know how that works and what to expect. But none of them have an idea of how to look at an AI application from a price point of view, a monthly subscription point of view. None of them. So what's the kind of questions that they need to ask?
It's,
Or do they need to call you?
I mean, so you can reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn at Matt Winchester.
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah. So, yeah, in my mind, after doing pitches to companies and watching other startups pitch to companies professionally, it honestly feels like maybe I'm just like too old and cranky, but like when I see startups like come in, I don't have any props here, but they're like, this is basically like the concept of what I see is like somebody comes in dressed like a wizard and they're like, got like
Yes,
some sorcery brewing over here. And they're like, I will solve your
exactly.
problem with my witchcraft. And then the
Exactly.
business owner look at expert like yourself and go, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, check this out. So I just feel like,
How you described it well. Yep.
I,
That's exactly what happens, by the way. And I can think of a specific meeting I had last week that was similar in that vein.
yeah. So this is my take on it is the way that I healthily look at this problem is asking what is this problem worth that it's being paid for already? Like if somebody is, and there was, I think it's Canva. Canva is like a huge digital
Yeah, 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 yeah.
art platform. So
Correct.
Canva, the way that they did their
Don't call
pitch,
it art though, but yep, fine. Okay.
AI slop. I don't know. Is that what you're looking?
It's closer to that, yes.
So Canva looked at it and said, this is the daily workload of somebody that is a digital artist. And they like laid
Yes,
it out and they said, this is like what a project would look like for them, and hours starting all the way through to the end. And they were
yes,
able to articulate it to the point where they said, this is the individual jobs that they're doing at each segment. And then they highlighted
yep,
one segment and said, oh, this piece over here that takes up the plurality of the work is actually just the artist reaching out to the client saying, hey, I'm done. What do you think of this? And then they're getting feedback and saying, oh, I'll make some changes based off your specifications. So there's like a
yes,
back and forth between client and
yes.
business, right? So Canva said, why don't we just shorten that gap by having it in one platform, and then somebody can go in and just like mock up the graphic and say, I want this, 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 this. And then the artist can see it in real time and they go, oh, okay. And then they just change it in real time and then hand it
Yep,
back to them and give them a charge. And then we handle the
yep.
monetary transaction.
Hmm.
Canva's got like a, what evaluation is that now? Like 40 billion or some bullshit like
Oh,
that? Yeah.
it's insane.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's what I mean is like these
And
platforms have
then
figured out.
they price according to that value that's being delivered.
Exactly. Exactly.
So now, my young friend, you walk straight into the question
Oh
about
no.
the $20,000 a month agent price point.
Oh no.
By Tell
Wait,
me
how
what
much
you
money?
think
It's
about that.
$20,000 a month.
$20,000 a month
Okay.
OpenAI agents.
All right.
Did you see that?
No. So what agent is 20, is
Okay,
like a law firm I can hire? Like,
bas- so 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 basically what OpenAI or ChatGPT is saying, basically what they're saying is that, currently you've got different levels, $20 or $200, I think, a month for the pro version. I'm not even sure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but they've now launched a new tier where you can replace knowledge workers, PhD level
that's
researchers
correct.
with an agent that charges $20,000 a month. And the response online was enjoyable. Let me put it that way.
There you go.
I think it's completely insane. I mean, they're not an insane company. They've got super smart people. Well, I'm assuming they've got super smart people working for them. So, how do you get to a price point of that? I mean, how do you think they got to a price point like that?
They're probably looking at it saying this is a critical thing that we need to solve, and we're paying this much a month for it, and this other company can come in and do it at half the price. So yeah, $20,000 a month seems fine. And I've seen that kind of mindset with businesses a lot, where they say this is a critical piece of our business. Like we can't just be like, oh, let's scale it down. Let's try to like get one person to do more tasks. It's just like, no, this job needs to be done like it is. But we have this tool over here that literally just works like human beings. So then why don't we just pay this AI agent $20,000 a month, I guess, to do that? I haven't heard $20,000 a month. I've heard like $5,000 a month.
No, no, no.
But
$20,000 a month and up.
oh, okay.
Yeah. And the feedback was, as I said, interesting and enjoyable. I think some people felt threatened by it, as you can imagine. A lot of industry pundits saw that as a startup, ChatGPT, OpenAI, that's apparently still burning through nearly $1 billion a day sometimes.
Yep.
I'm not making that up. I mean, that got my attention. They're nowhere near anywhere profitable.
Nope.
You know, um, there's a lot of people using it. There's very few people paying even the $20 subscription a month. So this again sounds to me like a go-to-market kind of challenge. I don't want to go there, but for me it was just interesting in terms of your pain point description, because the Canva one immediately made sense. You can see the logic, you can see how they got to that number, and how they charge folks. You can see that, and they're a successful company. I still struggle to see the $20,000 a month price point, or kind of fee that you're going to pay. So we'll see where that goes to.
Well,
Um,
here's like my take on it.
Please.
In my last startup, I was getting to the point where I was spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on digital ads.
Yep.
If I had Black Anvil, my new startup that I'm working on, by the way, wink, wink, if you ever need any digital marketing solutions, I can help you out with that.
And there's a few interesting case studies coming up.
Yeah, yeah. So it's if I had something like Black Anvil, I could just take care of digital marketing for me, and I could like see dollars go in, dollars go out, like an ROI statement from it. They would get my tens of thousands of dollars a month instead of giving it to individual people to go and do this for me.
Stop right there, because I know what Black Anvil is, of course. Um, it sounded to me like you just quietly or kind of slipped strategically into something similar than the the new AI tool from China called Manus.
Yeah.
Similar?
Somewhat like AI agents is like the new business model. I have friends right now that are going out and creating startups that are AI agents that do SDR work. So like they go out and like actually make calls for you where it's just an automated
Yes.
voice saying, "Hello, my name is Matthew
Yes.
Winchester
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I
And
think you're super cool and your business is neat and I totally love your brand and what you're doing and you need insert arbitrary service fee for services rendered from my firm to yours because that would help you grow and growth is good. So make sure to click this link I'm going to send you to your email and then that will book a meeting with me and then we can have a further longer discussion
and
about this.
it's all automated.
Yeah, it's all automated. It sounds like a person. This has been around for a while, actually. In my last startup,
I know.
I hired a firm from Arizona, I believe. Yeah, I think it was Arizona that did this for me. Basically, they had me sit in front of a camera, render my face, render my voice, and it would go and like make calls to people. And I had no idea that was happening until because they were just like a marketing firm, and I was like, cool. And like I was just getting calls to the day, and it would be people being like, it was so wonderful talking to you earlier today. You made some really fascinating points about food and food safety. And I was like,
And
okay,
you just say,
cool.
yeah, that's
Who
me.
are,
That's me.
yeah. And they're like, I'm looking forward for a conversation on Wednesday. And I'm like, on Wednesday. Okay, cool.
Were you were you comfortable with that?
I wasn't until I was like, I just was looking at my co-founder going, what the hell is happening? And then I
Mm.
called the firm because I realized I checked my calendar and it was inserted into my calendar by this company. And I was like, hey, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, this is how we actually function. Like, I'm not going to go and market for you. Jeez, you. So I'm just going to hire like one of my AI bots to go and do it. And they're going to look like you and they're going to sound like you.
No, this is not something that you and I normally talk about, but I do want to ask your opinion about this. Uh, More and more data is pointing to the fact that people, folks, especially younger generations, are struggling to find any kind of good paying job.
Oh, yeah.
There's a number of reasons for it, the normal economic reasons, etc., etc., etc. Is some of that also slowly being impacted and being driven by higher levels of AI adoption that we're not seeing yet or not yet?
So I think the thing that's like hurting the economy is not like AI adoption levels. This is my personal take. If you want
No,
to
no,
hit me
that's
up,
why I'm
yeah.
asking. Yeah.
So like I think the issue that we have going on is like people are not transitioning to this like highly connected attention based economy. Like I tell people like we're not
Like
in an
that.
AI
Explain that.
economy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like as weird as this sounds coming from an AI guy, I think we're in an attention based economy. How good
Yes.
you are at getting somebody's attention and holding that attention directly
Correct.
relates to how financially successful you are in this world
Yes.
that we live in. So if we're in that kind of world, you have to become somebody that is interesting, somebody that has like a very strong vision of what you're trying to achieve, can
Yes.
help other people achieve their objectives and be able to market that. Well, whatever skill, it could be basket weaving. Like I don't care what it is, as long as it's some way that you can legitimately connect with other people and help them solve the problems in a scalable way.
Look, well, exactly, and that's the key. And I agree 100% with your assessment, from a more philosophical level, human level, agree 100% with that. But AI is an essential tool to understand to help you do that, correct?
It can be. Like, let's say if you're a person,
Or is it becoming that?
it is, it's becoming that, but it isn't necessarily that way, like, yet. I don't know if it will ever be that way. There's people out there that are sitting there saying you own a coffee shop
Yep,
and you want more people to come into your coffee shop.
yep.
You could use AI. You could use something like that. You could just put a
But you
sign
don't
out.
have to.
You don't have to. You could just put a sign out front saying coffee with an arrow pointing towards the
Yep,
door, like it's over
yep.
here. And maybe that's
And
your solution.
if you're not south of the border, you can even get a 25% discount kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You can. Yeah.
I had to put that in. Sorry, Matthew.
So yeah,
You can always kind of delete it, if you want to.
no, I think this stuff like that's funny. So it's, if you're a business owner, like you can do different techniques like that to draw an audience, but then you have to ask
Sure.
yourself, like, is that, and I do this with business owners where every single, well, I can't say that. Almost every single business owner looks at me saying, I want more customers. Give me more money. Give me more customers. And I go, okay. And then I help them get more customers. And then I do a financial assessment afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, you definitely did need more customers. You have enough customers. You have lots of customers.
You just don't know how to sell to them,
You
or you
don't know
can
how to
sell a
sell
lot
to
more
them.
to them.
Like if you sold, like a lot of things are going to go like, hey, if you increase your average order value 10%, then
Yep.
all the new customers that you just brought on don't even matter. Like you'd just be selling to your current customers right now. If you figured out an intelligent way to bump price by 10%, you would be making more money. Or vice versa. If I said like, if you, most companies I just look at, and I'm like, if you take a look at your customer numbers, most of your customers only buy from you like a handful of times a year. So if you increase your repeat purchase rate by two, like just double up the number of people coming back every year,
Yep.
you like almost double your revenue.
You just make me smile big time, because that sounds like my life the last 15, 20 years with my business, running my business, telling
Yeah.
people, helping people, businesses to do that. And the Matthew, why I'm enjoying that, and this is kind of the message that I give a lot of business owners as well, is that don't believe everything that you hear about AI. Of course, it's disruptive, but it doesn't replace some foundational business, strategic, human issues. It just doesn't. And for me, I always enjoy those conversations. Like you've just mentioned, foundational stuff. Sell more to your existing customer base. Again, one of your other clients that we talk about as well. Open up a completely new sales channel by just providing more educational and informative content.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of stuff that gets me really excited. Um, and AI, you and I can talk about this every single week, but for me, AI is something that keeps on developing, keeps on changing. It's adding to how we can think about things and how we can solve things. Uh, but I don't think people have to fear it. Again, would you agree with that?
Yeah, like I think that AI is here to stay. I not like,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, yeah, it's not something that necessarily you have to be afraid of. If we want to get into a deep philosophical conversation,
Please, and
AI.
then we
So
can.
there's computer scientists. Computer science is like one of these weird applied sciences that it's actually like very well connected to math, but it's also very well connected to philosophy as well. And there's,
Well,
ooh,
that's very interesting because math is the language of the universe,
oh dear.
and philosophy is closely related to that. So, Matthew, you're teaching to the converted.
One of the things that we talk about in computer science is a few events. There's one of the events is called the convergence. The
Yes.
convergence is where AGI, like basically,
Here
yeah,
we go.
yeah. So this is where you have AGI say, "Hey, I'm just as creative or more creative than human beings, and
Yep.
I can think at a trillion times your speed. So
Yep.
therefore, you don't need to do anything anymore
Yep.
because
You can
I
just
can just
sit.
do everything now.
You can just sit on your lazy boy floating chair like in the movie Wall-E, and we'll just take
Yeah,
you
we'll
wherever you
just
want to be.
take care of everything from now on,
Yeah.
boss.
Yep.
So if an AGI ever gets to be as creative or more creative than people, and it thinks at a trillion times their speed, what do we do? Like this is something that computer scientists have asked ourselves for decades. Like, what do we do at that point? And then
Is it? Yep.
to that, is that a bad thing? Because if it's a bad thing, we have this other event that us computer
Never thought of
scientists,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
the other event that we talk about as computer scientists is called the AI horizon. So the AI horizon is we're at the point where we can see it coming. And as a species, we can sit there and say, do we turn it off? Because we can just push a button and then it ceases. So do we want to do that? Is that meaningful?
What do you mean by AI horizon? Sorry, I just need to extend my parking time.
So the AI horizon is like if we as a species, like let's just say like Microsoft came out tomorrow, or like just somebody came out tomorrow and they said, hey, like AGI is here, it's going to happen. Here's our demo, try it out. And it showed you like, yeah, this is and like experts everywhere are saying, yeah, this is like an AGI that is like basically ready to go. Then as a species, do we say, okay, like we embrace this, given that this is a new piece of technology that's fundamentally going to change the trajectory of humans forever?
Oh, yes, it will.
Or do we just go and we just turn it off and don't do it? Because it will fundamentally change our behavior because we no longer need, and this is a weird way of thinking about it. It's not like we don't need to do anything. We're still probably going to do stuff that makes us happy every day, but we don't need to do those things. We just have an AI can do anything for us. Just create new forms of
Yeah, yeah.
music,
No,
new
no, I get
forms of
it.
science, cure every disease. Like why bother doing anything at that point?
So we're definitely going to talk about that on another session. But last question for today, or last point of conversation today, is that who do you trust to? No, that's the wrong way of asking it. When you read the tea leaves currently, you know the different approaches to what can potentially become AGI. The EU approach, the American approach, the Chinese Asian approach. Each of them have a different, man, I shouldn't use that word, but each of them have a different political system, political belief system, cultural values, kind of a way of living, working, doing things. And for this discussion, let's assume that the American way, the way it used to be, will hold. I'm not going anywhere political with this. I'm just making an assumption. Who of these three blocks, if we can call it three blocks, not North America, because Canada kind of leans a little bit between Europe and European Union and the States. So between the US, China, EU, which one of those three do you think will you trust the most, or do you think has the best approach, just based on your own opinion, in terms of helping us not cross the horizon or get into trouble?
I don't know, because
I know
like
it's a big question.
this is my take on it. Like I had prior to like a few years ago, I had like really strong beliefs in Europe. I thought like Europe was like a world leader for like ethics, being able to resolve problems, be
Hmm.
able to deal with crisis.
Yes,
The only thing is, due to the Ukraine thing, I'm now looking at this saying, you guys just like arguing a lot with each other, huh? And
yes, exactly. You can't
yeah,
agree even on the most basic of things. Yep,
yeah. So
agree.
I'm a little concerned about your ability to actually crisis resolve because you have a crisis like right there that's happening, like right next to you, and you're still arguing amongst yourselves about like, yeah, but do we need to? What should we do? And how bad is
Yes,
it?
or
And can we get
or let's
America to take care of it? Hey, America.
or
Oh
let's
no, we can't get America to. Oh no, they're
or
angry.
let's plan for the next 10 years kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, that's so like I'm looking at Europe, just kind of like rolling my eyes at whatever they're doing. If I look at if I look at America instead of Europe, the thing that I have with America is, especially after the recent changes in government, I don't know what they're
Yep.
doing. Like maybe this is just me being super critical, and if you want to like beat me up on social media for it, go ahead. But I'm
Mhm.
just looking at it saying, like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, especially with like the talking about like ripping up the CHIPS Act. Like, what's the where's the future of this going? Like, what's your strategy here? I don't understand.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
just kind of like left confused with the prolonged protracted
Correct.
strategy to the market. And then if I look at China, the best way to describe China is a meme that somebody gave me where it showed like one guy catching fish and the guy's name was OpenAI and he's catching a fish and he's putting it into a bucket and next to him.
Yes.
And it's called OpenAI. And then another guy comes along and he casts his reel inside of the bucket to catch the fish that OpenAI had. And the guy that's catching the fish is called DeepSeek. And they're like, OpenAI is looking at
Exactly.
him going, really? Really, you're going to do this? And it was like, yeah, I'm going to, why
Try and
not?
stop me.
Yeah,
Try and
like,
stop me.
what are you going to
Yeah.
do? And like, that's
Yeah.
kind of like their market approach to things is like, they don't care about patents. They don't care
No, they
about
don't.
like intellectual property rights. They don't care about
No,
any of
they
that stuff.
don't.
They're just like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm just going to copy stuff because why not?
So what you basically say, and then we have to conclude for the day. So what you basically saying at the end of the day, it's going to be self-regulatory.
Yeah, like I don't
People,
know. And
people will have to self-regulate with
yeah,
this.
because I just don't see like if there was like some government that stood up and said like, "Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to step up." Like I was especially expecting America to step up and do something about it, but I'm just not seeing any kind of right. Like especially
Oh
like
no, I can see them go the other way currently
yeah,
in
they're
terms
just
of
like
yeah,
let corporate do whatever corporate wants. That's why
correct.
they're setting up like a Bitcoin exchange reserve or some nonsense like that.
Yes.
And I'm just maybe I'm just like anti Bitcoin. I'm just like looking at this again like really confused, going I don't get that sense at all.
Let's not talk about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, please not, Matthew. There you'll need to take out a big whiteboard.
Yeah. So that's at
Yeah.
least my take on it. But like, can we talk about like business stuff for a second here? Because like I'm
Yeah.
confused. I'm not an investor, but like let's say if again like wizardry guy is sitting there like doing
Mm.
witchcraft, and I'm like, hey, like I made AGI and it solves like all problems forever. What's it worth to you?
So that's a very, very good question.
And like, do you even want to invest in it, given that somebody else could theoretically do it, and then if somebody else theoretically does it, is it privatized at that point? Like I don't even know how to approach something like that, right? Like it's just for
Uh,
the
uh,
ROI is like a
uh,
vertical line like that.
well, the short answer to that is nobody knows. And you can already see a divergence happening between open source and non-open source and different approaches. Some very smart people in terms of how they approach this, how they're developing this. Uh, to be honest, Matthew, nobody knows. I believe that if you look at the valuations of some of these businesses, the only way you can get to some of these valuations of very young, unproven startups, the valuations only make sense if there's a accepted but unstated hope or projection that it's going to get to a level of AGI or a much higher level of intelligence that we currently see. Otherwise, the valuations just simply doesn't make sense. Um, but even the investment ecosystem in terms of large rounds, 20 billion, 40 billion, you don't see any new names. It's the same
Yeah,
companies that keeps on coming up. It's the same investors that keeps on coming up. So you can definitely see a monopolization, which is very dangerous in terms of this space. Uh, and they have deep, 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 deep pockets. Losing 100 billion maybe hurts over morning coffee. You're talking about that kind of level of investment. So I think at this stage, There's a fear of missing out, FOMO, driving a large amount of these deals. I also think that they're pushing it to the limit to see what can come out of it, but there's simply no methodology in terms of how you even start quantifying something like that. However, uh, love him or hate him, one of the things that Elon Musk did say a few years ago was that he was making the case for a universal income approach to business. If you mention that to business owners, they all look at you with shock and horror, and they see Social Security just on turbocharge.
Yeah.
And you actually need to explain to them that's not what it is. It's simply a case where the value generated by artificial intelligence and AGI, what do you do with the value? It either goes in two ways. It either belongs to a few folks at the top, or it gets distributed fairly amongst folks. But there's no way of generating revenues anymore. There's no need for people to work anymore. Maybe in 20 years, you and I will have a beer about this conversation. But at this stage, Matthew, I do not know where this is going to end up.
You just don't want to give me the secrets, do you?
No, I do not know where this is going to end up at. So this is why, for me, I can talk about smaller investments with confidence, smaller rounds with confidence, in terms of applications. That makes sense to me. But when you start talking about valuations of, and I'm not going to mention companies, but if you start talking about some of the super high valuations of certain companies, it just doesn't make sense. That to me just tells me there's something else potentially underwriting it that we don't know at this stage. I can't make sense of it.
Yeah, me
That's
either.
a short answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, young man. That was lovely. Gotta go.
All right. Thank you so much, Werner. It's always good talking with you. And if you like our episode, make sure to click subscribe down below. Make sure to drop us a like. If you got any questions, feel free to ask it in the comments. And see you next time.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.